Welcome back to Hannity. So as we mentioned in our opening monologue tonight, House Republicans finally are opening investigations into this very corrupt Uranium One deal that compromised all of our national security, involving the Obama administration and, of course, the Clintons. Also tonight, the Department of Justice finally is considering whether to lift the gag order on the FBI informant at the center of the scandal. Here with the reaction are people that deserve a lot of credit for digging deep. The Hill's John Solomon, Circa News' Sarah Carter, and an attorney I'd never want to go up against, Victoria Tunsing, who is representing the FBI informant. Victoria, I want to start with you. Last night, you actually said that your client, this informant, the guy that has evidence, emails, documents, tape recordings that prove bribery, extortion, money laundering, etc., he has details of the exact plans to bribe the Clintons. It was all by design.
Not going into detail, you know that, Sean, but he will give an overview and specific conversations that he had with Russians in what they were thinking about the money that they were spending. Let me just be that general.
And
it involves the Clintons.
Okay. Listen, I have too much respect for you over the years to push you harder on this. Let me start with a broader question for Sarah and John. In terms of the degree of scandal, because, Sarah, you know this informant. You've spoken to them. You know what he has. How bad is this going to get for the people that we're mentioning that are involved in this?
Oh, let me clarify. I do know the informant. I don't know everything that he has because some of it's considered classified, Sean, and
Understood.
I'm not privy to that classified information. And he is bound by the non-disclosure agreement. But I think as the investigation moves forward with the House Intelligence Committee, with the Oversight Committee, with the Judiciary, and as soon as the Department of Justice, I hopefully lifts his non-disclosure agreement and protects him, I think that this will lead to an investigation that will expose and finally, for once, tell the American people and Congress what actually happened with the Uranium One deal, how far the Russians were willing to go, and the connections those Russians made in the United States. And that is going to be imperative. And there is so much there. It's like we've unraveled a thread, right? And it just doesn't stop unraveling. So I think that the momentum needs to be kept up, Sean. People need to continue to look into this. We need to continue the investigation, and we need to see where it leads, wherever it leads. But this is probably one of the most significant stories that we've told in a long time.
John Solomon, I'll ask you, because the FBI knew in 2009 and 2010, before this Uranium One deal was done, they had evidence, a lot of it, that including tapes and emails and documents and an FBI informant. They knew it all. And they still approved this deal, knowing that all this is going on because Vladimir Putin and a hostile actor, we've been lectured about Russia, Russia, Russia for a year, that they wanted to get the market on American uranium. And the sad part is they succeeded.
So let's, if you let me do a little reporting on your show here. So just a little bit ago, before we came on here, Victoria and I talked, and she was able to confirm for me that her client has information that Director Mueller and President Obama and other officials were briefed on this investigation in real time as it was going on. That's the first time we've heard that. Maybe she can answer a little bit more on the show about that.
Victoria?
Well, my client was told this information. Now, whether the Bureau was puffing, I don't think so, because they were very specific. They said that the briefing made it into President Obama's daily briefing papers. So I don't think they made that out.
So let me see if I got this straight. So
yeah.
Mueller, Rosenstein, maybe even Comey at the time, and the President of the United States, certainly Eric Holder was the head of the DOJ, they all knew that they had all this evidence that the Russians had infiltrated with the purpose of a criminal enterprise to corner the market on uranium, the foundational material of nuclear weapons. Anyone?
That is correct.
Sarah, you're shaking your head. Yes, that's possible. And Robert Mueller's now investigating anything involved with Russia. How is that possible?
You know, Sean, I think this cries out for a special counsel. I just don't see how this can continue on. Congressional committees are fine, but this really this is a criminal investigation, and Jeff Sessions isn't going to ever feel comfortable coordinating that. And Rod Rosenstein is recused because he was the U.S. attorney.
So then who appoints a special counsel?
Well, no, Jeff Sessions can appoint the special counsel. Yeah. He's not recused. He's just not going to be comfortable doing it. So he ought to get somebody in here and get this off their hands.
Sarah?
I agree with Victoria. I think that there's only so far that many of us can go, particularly with this type of investigation, especially, Sean, when it goes into territory that's classified. But I think that a special counsel can do that. They can look into this. Also, the House Intelligence Committee can look into a lot of these issues. Oversight can take a look. Senator Grassley's done tremendous as well as far as asking the right questions and moving forward. But I think a special counsel, as Victoria suggested, is something that I've been hearing from sources, something that they hope Attorney General Jeff Sessions moves forward with.
And John, let's go into the new information that now that the investigation, then they allowed the visas to an individual that they know was involved in this. How could that happen?
Yeah, the Maine immigration law says that you may not grant a visa to someone that you know is engaged in criminal conduct, and specifically there's a section that says if you know they're involved in money laundering. Well, we know the Russian nuclear official that was eventually indicted was involved in money laundering. That was a kickback and money laundering scheme. The Obama administration in 2011 and then again in 2014, according to court records, not according to anonymous sources, court records, they gave this guy 2 visas even though they knew he was involved in a criminal conspiracy. And I think that that's why these questions are surfacing. There's either a breakdown in the system or a knowing and willful decision to let these people into our country.
And to let people know how hard, Sarah, you've been working, and John, you've been working, you guys have known this evidence has existed for over a year, correct? Or you suspected it existed. Let's say it in a nice way.
About 4 months, 5 months for me personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah?
Right about the same time. A little bit longer, but yes.
DNC and the Russian dossier, Sarah, I'm really trying to understand this too. Now we have confirmation that the DNC and Hillary Clinton's lawyer paid. They've lied to us for a year. Outright lied to us.
Well, they didn't want to admit it, right? Nobody wanted this information to be revealed. And now we find out April 2016, the DNC and the Clinton campaign were funding the dossier. But, Sean, I was talking to sources that deal with Russian intelligence. This is U.S. intelligence, U.S. sources that deal with the Russians often. The minute Christopher Steele stepped into Russia to start talking to former FSB, KGB, former KGB agents, and started digging into President Trump, they knew immediately who was funding it, and they used it for disinformation. So I think that what's interesting here is that actually the Democrats, maybe unknowingly, were actually funding a disinformation campaign by the Russians. That's astonishing.
Disinformation campaign, propaganda campaign, and let's call it what it is. That means lying. And
That's
lying
right.
And paying Russians for phony stories and everything else. Look, I can't. Both of you have come under a lot of fire for your reporting, and I think tonight in many ways is only the beginning of a vindication that I've been predicting is coming. And Victoria, great job. I'm glad that your client picked the right person. I've known you for many years. You're tough. I wouldn't want to go against you in a courtroom. We'll have you guys back on tomorrow night. Thank you all for being with us, and we really appreciate it. We have a lot more to come tonight, a lot more breaking news. Sebastian Gorka, Greg Jarrett, they will react to these explosive new details about Uranium One and the Russian dossier. And on top of that, we'll have part 2 of our interview, the personal side of Ivanka Trump. Straight ahead.